Hey everyone, James from TeaDB here, bringing you another Inbetweenisode. Today, going to be drinking a couple teas on the show, and they're teas that are not often featured actually. They're from the Mengku Guhuaxiang Tea Factory, or Mengku Hongcha. I think it's the associated or similar factories at least. And they're factories that I feel like I cover a lot less often than something like Dai or Shaguan. The production of this factory, Mengku factory, is also really high, similar to those other big factories. They make a lot of tea, and they also have been making a lot of tea for a while. Probably the main reason why I don't bring it on too much is there's only really one cake from this factory that I do drink regularly and that I do own, and that is what is it called? The Hongcha TeaDB. And I brought that on to an Inbetweenisode, maybe two, and that's a really nice sort of daily tea for myself. I like that tea a fair bit, and do drink it fairly regularly, but beyond that, I'm just not drinking a ton from this factory. And it's not one that I've been excited enough to really sample out or really do more of a deep dive through. But recently, Emilio over at the Jade Leaf decided to send me a couple of his leftover samples that he had been trying from earlier. So teas from 2004, 2005, 2006, which is a range of which I'm definitely interested in tea. And he sent over kind of leftovers, I think, of some sampling he'd done, Taiwanese stored Mengku tea. So I wanted to give them all a shot. I had some brief conversations on Facebook with Emilio about these tea. And one interesting thing that I wanted to note is that they really do have kind of a distinct characteristic to it that is definitely different from other tea. Specifically, they have a lot of Hongcha notes into it. There's like a really distinct sweetness to it, and you can pick up on it quite easily, especially when you're having like I think 3 or 4 of these in consecutive days. There's a very consistent theme to it. So I think people that do sort of like that profile, it's something to keep your eyes out for. Personally, for me, it's not necessarily my preferred tea. I tend to prefer tea either from Yiwu or from Menghai County. I also like Shaguan teas. Those can be northern, but they have a very different sort of taste profile than most of these teas here. So the 2 teas I chose to bring on kind of arbitrarily, frankly, because a lot of the 4 or 5 he sent all really did have the similar characteristics as the Mengku Big Leaf from 2005. And the Red Ribbon Guhuaxiang from 2004. And one interesting thing I did note is that they are fairly different actually from the TeaDB that I do drink. And I don't know if that's in accordance to the storage. I think these may have had a little bit lighter Taiwanese storage than the TeaDB I drink, or just because the material and the production's a little different. To me, at least, the TeaDB tastes a little bit more like a normal traditional Pu'erh, whereas these have a very distinct kind of northern regional characteristic to it that I kind of associate with sort of like this Hongcha notes. The Hongcha notes are interesting. I've had certain tea friends note it in the aging of like sort of Yiwu teas as well. I've seen it described as a bit of a phase, and I do think it kind of depends when you get that Hongcha note, whether it's like something to be concerned with or something that's bad. For these teas, I do tend to think it's more of a regional characteristic rather than like necessarily an aging phase. I would expect, at least my current expectation is that Yiwu teas, when they do develop that, would eventually pass through it. And I also think that the Hongcha aspects of both of these teas are considerably stronger than what I've gotten from Yiwu teas. Okay, so let's get into it. We're gonna start with the Big Leaf. All right, so using about 4.6 grams for 70 milliliters. I drank a couple steeps beforehand of both of these. So this is steep number 3 made right here. While that cools down, I'm also gonna make steep number 4. I have multiple chahais going. If it were just me, I'd just be drinking like this, but for the sake of the episode, I want to bring in more steeps. So going to be drinking kind of transferring between multiple vegetables just for a little extra cooling. All right. pour that into this one. Keeping the steeps fairly short. Probably could go a little bit longer. So, earlier it was a little fruitier. Now it's more woody. Definitely a lot of sweetness, kind of a corn sweetness that does remind me of sort of Yunanese blacks. I think I've seen, someone had this theory, it may have been Marshall or someone, that a lot of these teas age to be sort of like Yunnan blacks because this region is historically known to have Yunnan blacks. I'm not experienced enough to really know if that's necessarily the case, but certainly sounds plausible. So I'm going to just be doing both of these at once. So here is steep number 3 of the 2004 Guhuaxiang. Okay, I'll take a smell of this as well. So this one definitely has sort of like a richer, almost peach apricot aroma coming from this. I could definitely see something like this being very appealing to people that are very aroma driven or newer drinkers, maybe. not to be too insulting about it, but yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it has a certain vibrancy to it that you don't necessarily expect. It's less than that earthy Pu'erh zone. So storage probably not too heavy on especially the Guhuaxiang, but I don't think on either of these. Cheers. Very sweet corn syrup. Smooth, soft mouthfeel. Now a bit sour, astringent on the back end. Yeah. So, very similar Hongcha-ness to this, especially as the oxidation even feels very similar to that. Maybe a little more sourness and astringency to it, just because this is Pu'erh. Cheers. So, same tea, steep number 4. Okay, let's let that sit and think about sort of the aftertaste and how it's lingering. Still a lot of sweetness coming from the tea. Definitely tastes very, very Hongcha-ish. It's not hard to find in this tea. Sometimes some of these notes can be fairly hidden underneath the profiles and you're like, oh yeah, I can taste that now. But it's pretty front and center. I'd say it's the main sort of taste characteristic for these teas right now. Wood. It's kind of like Pu'erh infused Hongcha or something. All right, so we're now doing the Guhuaxiang, steep number 3. This one's a little earthier, also a little less sweet. Still has that sort of corn fruit sweetness to it, probably a little richer in the fruit on this one, also maybe a little more minerals. I do like this a little bit better. It just has a little more complexity going on, but it also is less sweet, so I don't know. I don't necessarily love this either. Yeah, a little sourness to it as well. Yeah, a little bit of fruit. Definitely, actually, definitely a fair bit of fruit. Sorry, some people are messaging me. And let's see how that sits in the mouth. Yeah, it does coat the mouth with a little bit of sweetness going in. Yeah, I don't think I particularly care for either of these teas. I'd probably give both maybe something like a 5 rating. They're not bad, and I think some of that is just personally my own subjective taste towards certain styles of pu'er, rather than these being objectively awful. But I do also have a hard time seeing anyone being absolutely in love with these teas. To me, it's just way less exciting than even like a pretty average dye production from 2005, 2004. And those teas are considerably more expensive, probably, the dye teas, and I do think that's actually well founded in this case. So yeah, let me know your feelings on this factory if you've tried teas in this date range. I think it's interesting because we do start to see a lot more teas pressed in Mengku, a lot of different productions that are especially a lot newer, especially sort of boutique ones. It'll be interesting to see if those are similar or they do diverge a bit from these, if these are sort of like unique one-offs that have that Hongcha note, or we'd expect like something like a 2010 like Linchong tea to sort of have a similar fruitiness to it if it were to sort of undergo Taiwanese storage. So yeah, probably not teas I'm going to be seeking out any more than I have in the past, but they are interesting to try. So thank you, Emilio, for sending these in. Check out his site. He sells different pu'er and stuff like that, a lot of which are not from Mengku. I don't think he sells hardly any Mengku, actually, so definitely check out his site, and hopefully you found this interesting. I'm going to drink this as well. Yeah, these teas are also notably not very bitter, and not terribly astringent. It's a little more in that like sour, mouth drying range to me, which I also don't particularly love. So yeah, probably giving these both maybe 5 ratings. They're very similar. They're sort of different variations on similar themes. Thank you again for tuning in. Let me know how you liked it. Let me know if you like Mengku tea, and I will see y'all next time.